We will call the meeting of the Porterville Area Development Authority to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Tribe member Gary Santos. Here. Secretary Relene Clower. Here. City ex-official member John Lawless.
Present.
City member Milt Stowe.
Present.
City member Baldo Rodriguez. Chair Monty Reyes.
Present. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you. This is the time for oral communications, the opportunity to address the Porterville Area Development Authority on any scheduled matter. Unless additional time is authorized, all commentary shall be limited to 3 minutes per individual and no more than 15 minutes total. Is there anyone who would like to come forward? Well, I'll give you a few seconds to get comfortable there. And I think we don't see anybody in the council chambers for comment. Is there anybody that is on virtually?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the meeting. So we've got some scheduled matters ahead of us, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Lawless.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before the authority this afternoon are 5 items, and I believe there'll be another matter of other matters of consideration as well. Is the first being to consider approval of the draft minutes from its meeting of November 19th, 2021. Recommendation would be to review the minutes and to take action upon them with any corrections.
Okay, we've had the minutes provided to us. If we want to take a second to take a look at those, we can. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Or any...
Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
As presented.
And so we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Do we have a second? Second. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Can we call for the vote, please?
Tribe member Gary Santos. Aye. City member, I apologize. City member Milt Stowe.
Aye.
Secretary Relene Clower. Aye. Chair Monty Reyes.
Aye. Okay, passes. Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item of order, Your Honor, is to consider a resolution adopting procedures consistent with AB 361 and the Ralph M. Brown Act. This has been a continuing resolution given emergency circumstances allowing for remote emergency participation. We have a number of members that are, or at least one member that is participating such today, and this allows that continued access to occur consistent with Brown Act, emergency Brown Act provisions. Recommendation be to approve.
I make a motion that we continue the procedure.
Okay, so we have a motion to continue with AB 631 and all the factors it involves that allows us to meet remotely. Is there a second? Okay, so we'll go ahead and call for the vote.
Tribe member Gary Santos. Aye. City member Milt Stowe.
Aye.
Secretary Relene Clower. Aye. Chair Monty Reyes.
Aye. Passes 4-0. Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item in order, Your Honor, is given the authority's approval of the draft bylaws at your last meeting on November 19th. Consistent with those bylaws was, and the authority's been operating with a presiding officer and an acting secretary. With the adoption of the draft bylaws, it spoke to the an election of board officers, including the president, vice president, and secretary. So before the authority would be, consistent with those bylaws, would be those election of officers.
Okay.
Chair, are we making an appointment for, or are we just confirming what we already had?
Well, and I was going to ask that question. I know we'd take action on this. We had something in interim, but also I think the bylaws mentioned something happening early on next year for, just as an order of re-election or election of officers. So I was going to ask the same question.
So you would be appointing, you do need to go ahead and install your quote permanent, meaning until, pursuant to your bylaws, and rather, because right now you just have acting. So how you guys want to go about that, it's up to you. You can go ahead and go with what you've already done on the acting and just make a motion to have that slate become the, the permanent or, the established ones. And then, yes, there will be another one then. This is coming, I think it's, did we say February? I believe that's what was said.
Okay, in that case, Chair, I make a motion that we keep the acting as permanent until February, or the next term.
Yeah, I'll verify that. No, let me hold on 1 second here.
What I was looking at too. But in either case, it's fine.
Because we talked about it, you guys were gonna do it annually.
Yes, Mr. Santos.
I don't know if these are on. Oh, there they are. I think we'd be okay if we continue with you as the president and Raylene as the vice president and maybe Milt Stowe as the secretary. And that'll hold us over for the next year and we can continue on with our meetings. That would be my motion if everybody's okay with that.
So I know Councilmember Stowe had a motion, so I think that would be asking for an amendment, or if we need to open nominations to be able to make a change, just want to be clear and make sure we do it right.
I think that if there is a motion to approve the current slate that are acting and make those the installed officers, that is fine, perfectly fine.
Okay.
There would need to,
Our current officers are Monty, your president, and Gary's vice president, and Rayleigh's secretary, is that who it is?
No,
I
there's,
think there's only a presiding officer and an acting secretary currently. So there's a vacant,
Oh,
there's a
good point.
vacant office.
Oh,
so we have a vacancy for the vice president, and then, I know Member Clower was secretary, so I'm not sure if Mr. Santos, you want to,
okay, well, I'll rescind my motion,
Okay.
and we can open up for nominations if that's the case.
okay, thank you. And then, Mr. Santos, if you want to proceed.
I'm sorry for the confusion, but I think if, we just leave it the way it is, then I guess we can move forward. So,
Here's a way to move forward. You guys can go ahead and approve the two that are the two actings as your installed officers for those positions, and then you can take up the issue of vice president and decide who you'd like to appoint for that one. So if you want to get that out of the way, since it sounds like everybody's in more or less agreement on the president and secretary positions, you guys can go ahead and make that motion
Okay.
to approve that now, and then you guys can address the vice president.
Thank you, and appreciate the recommendation. So I think, okay,
In that case, I'll make that motion to approve the president and secretary as it is now, the acting.
okay. So we have a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and call for the vote.
Tribe member Gary Santos.
Aye.
City member Milt Stowe.
Aye.
Secretary Raylene Clower. Aye. Chair Monty Reyes.
Aye. Thank you. Passes 4-0. And now we can move on to the vacant position of the vice president.
I make a motion, Gary Santos be the vice president.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Go ahead and call for the vote on that.
City Member Milt Stowe.
Aye.
Secretary Raylene Clower. Newly appointed Vice President Gary Santos. And President Monty Reyes.
Aye, thank you. Passes 4-0. Thank you for everyone for working through the bylaws and getting that going. We can move on to the next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next item of order is a storm drain recharge retention basin project update. This was a carryover discussion item, obviously an important project as part of the project area development. I know there was discussion in terms of the status of the environmental impact review release, which, and I think the city attorney, Jason Ridenauer, is also on this as well, that can help provide in terms of what its current status is. We are still awaiting 3 responses from, and I'm going to have to get some help from the city attorney. There's a required 30 days upon receipt that those are from certified receipt have 30 days to provide responses prior to circulation, which we're still awaiting 3 return receipts from 3 of the notified interested parties.
Right, so notices had to be sent out to, I believe it's other tribes, was specifically what I understood from Jason Ridenauer's comments on this. Those have been sent out, they were sent out not quite a month ago, they went on November 23rd was the date. So they have, in all of those that
Receive those notices, have 30 days from the receipt to provide their responses on the environmental. So
we're really just in the process.
And there's nothing we can do. We are sort of waiting for these responses to come in, waiting for a reasonable amount of time to come in where we can then deem that there is that we aren't going to get them. So, but we're in that interim period right now.
Okay, thank you.
I believe that there was a conversation about, while that, and not a violation of the circulation of the environment impact report, was to continue to work on the development of, I believe to bid the project, if I want to make sure I'm good on the facts on this, but to proceed without it coming to approval, project approval, or any,
Julie, would you like for me to comment on that?
Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you.
So thank you, Ms. Lowe, Mr. Wallace. Yeah, so we're complying with AB 52 right now. And speaking with Ms. Liu and Mr. Nye, that we would be okay to proceed and not in violation of the CEQA law if all the groundwork was done and even the bids could be released. There just could be no formal action taken to award the bid, to award the project, as the city council needs to consider approval of the environmental document before that is taken.
Correct.
Okay, questions from the board, Mr. Santos?
Comment, President. Is there, and I know our owner's rep and our general contractor and even the gaming commissions here in the audience, is there anybody that you guys' main point person that we could work directly with on any of these issues? I know John was mentioned at one time, and I just want to reiterate on the scheduling that we have on our project and the urgency. We all understand and appreciate you guys' due diligence on this and your processes, and we want to respect those also. And but we need to understand them in the meantime. So it may seem like we're pushing a little bit hard at times, and we may just not know your guys' process or understand it. So if we can iron that out as much as possible, I think we can get through this process a lot easier, a lot faster, and so we can all stay on task. We're trying to understand, and I'm pretty sure you guys are trying to understand us, so we just want to put an urgency on that. So I'd just like to state that for the record, and Chairman Garfield has a hand up.
Sure, and I'll go ahead and ask Chairman Garfield to comment, and then maybe if there's some questions at the end, we can answer.
Okay, thank you. Is what I was listening, what you're talking about on the AB 52 stuff, was that for the Heritage Complex tribal consultation?
No, that's different.
Oh, okay.
This is specific to the storm drain basin. As
Okay.
part of the environmental review, we have to send a certified, so we have sent by certified letter notification of the project to the interested parties, which it indicates that they have 30 days upon receipt. So as the city attorney said, mailing was made on the 23rd, that's documented. And I would say the timeline that we're working on right now is 30 days from the mailing period. Now recognize they have 30 days upon receipt. So these receipts are coming in. We are so again, under the environmental document, we're counting 30 days from when they were mailed, and we can tell when they're being received. We have 3 that have not returned. That means that those tribes have not gone to their PO box, I guess, to receive their mail. So we have 3 of those letters that are, as of today's meeting, mailed back on November 23rd. So here we are, December 17th, and 3 tribes have not taken receipt of their notification because we haven't received the return receipt. So, but recognize they have 30 days upon their receipt to be able to give comment. So we're going to be making some legal determinations with regards to when we were mailed and what was reasonable period of time for comments to be received. And so in support of the comments about trying to expedite this, a couple different things are happening. One, running a clock from when the date was mailed, because somebody technically could never receive their mail if they'd like, and they're still going to have 30 days. But we're going to, I would say, craft a legal. I don't want to speak for the city attorney, but a legal pathway to say this was a reasonable period of time for comments to be made based upon other parties of interest and their responses. Incorporate any comments that those are received in a reasonable period of time. Incorporate any comments received within the environmental document, or if there's any other comments received. Subsequent to this, bidding documents, and I would say in the effort of trying to expedite things, bidding documents can be prepared. Certain activities can be undertaken. Just no action taken by the city council pending the completion of the circulation. Public hearing, there will be a public hearing scheduled based on the environmental to be considered by the city council.
Right, we can't presumptively deem it moving forward, in advance of a public hearing where the public has a right to provide testimony, so we have to be careful that we don't want to do anything procedurally that would get in the way of getting this project done. So we have to make sure we're careful. But there are certain things we can do where there won't be too much detrimental reliance that we have to worry about, or, where people can try to also claim relief because, we acted as if the project was moving forward even though we didn't have the approvals yet.
What are the tribes are we waiting on?
Mr. Reiner, are you familiar with the?
I apologize, I don't have that list in front of me. I looked at it a couple hours ago. I don't have it in front of me at this moment, but I do know that there's 3. So what I was gonna actually entertain with the city attorney next week to see if it'd be appropriate if I had my staff call the contact information that the state provided, because all the addresses are provided by the state, and the tribes register with the state about this AB 52 and receiving this notification. So we could, if appropriate, we could reach out and just try to touch base with them and see, hey, we're undergoing this project. We put out this certified mail in November, and we haven't received a return receipt yet. Have you, have you changed your PO box and not notified the state? Or
Right.
things could have happened, and so
We may be able to, we can also ask, we'd say, hey, can you confirm that you've received it, and if so, when? Because then that also gives us the ability to get that calendar.
I can also take it. I could also possibly just take it if the person who we speak with has the authority, take an official comment from them that they have no comment. Oftentimes, on one of these projects, we'll get a call from a few tribes that will respond to let us know there's no comment, just so we can end that waiting period for them.
Yep. So those are ways to kind of get around that.
Okay, and I see Chairman Garfield do you have another question?
I'm just gonna add on, I just wanted to let everybody speak before I did. So what happens here is, each of the tribes, I'm not sure what tribes were sent there, but there's a Yokos coalition. There's 5 Yokos tribes that accept these letters from projects, and normally what happens in these areas is those tribes will defer to the most local tribe to whatever the project may be, anywhere in the RAB 52 area, which is from the Tejon Pass all the way up to Pass Merced. So we receive the letters from all over Central Valley, and then if it's out near Tachi, then we'll get the same letter they do, and we will defer to that tribe. Or if it's Tejon tribe, then the same thing, and the same, because they all receive these same letters. So most likely it would probably just be easy just to maybe follow up with whoever their contact person is on the list, and they will most likely verbally say they will defer to the river in this case, and then our response will be the final one. But to my understanding, in these contracts, they're supposed to put funding for those monitors to come up there. So that may be further discussion, because actually it is further discussion, but not in this case. I just seen it in the previous email. That was my comment.
On the heritage one, so we can talk, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it seems that with the update, there are some things that are sort of out of the control of on the receiving ends, at least from us, to just waiting for some responses. But it does look like we have some ways to follow through and verify if people are indeed receiving these letters.
Right, and I guess the point being made that there's just not waiting on this, but I mean there is, but there's a certain amount of activity still churning to try to meet schedule and important deadlines.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Yes, sir.
President, if we can get a list of the the names of the tribes, maybe we can expedite that. We can help you guys out in that area. And as soon as we get their responses back, then we can move forward.
One quick comment to you, Monty.
Yes.
Thank you. For this relocation project, we do have a monitor, ARC monitor that we're paying, so it shouldn't be an issue for this project. The relocation project, that is. So everything that comes underneath that umbrella, we should have somebody.
Okay. That's good to know. Are there any other questions from the board for this item? Okay, and that's just an update, so no action need be taken, but I'm sure we'll have some correspondence going forward on these items.
Right, and I think it's important to continue as an agenda item to show progress or status in future meetings.
Okay, great, thank you. And that brings us to the next item.
Thank you. And then, kind of a similar capacity and looking at local roads improvement coordination. In your last meeting, there was discussions of looking at given timelines. And kind of the comment I made at the end of at the last meeting was looking at, we know what opening day activities or street improvements, primarily intersection improvements at Scranton and Westwood and West and Scranton, with signalization and other intersection improvements. Primarily those are, as well as some other off-site transportation improvements on Westwood. And in the consideration of that, looking at, owner's representative put together kind of I would say a good synopsis of looking at what are interim and ultimate alternatives to that. I think the concern that was raised in the last meeting, and I guess continued forward for further discussion, is looking at just a timeliness issue of time to take, not so much money, but the time to design and complete the improvements. So I think an important conversation of looking at some point there, what has been designed and can be constructed consistent with what's been defined versus what would be ideal but may not be timely. And I think it's an important conversation of, eventually there's a kind of a point of no return where that determination needs to be made, and whether it's, what's the best way forward.
Thank you for the information that was presented in the packet as well. Are there any questions from members regarding this item, or any concerns with any of the information, or questions for future updates?
My only concern is for the roads. I mean, it's got to work for all of us, obviously. And I know we're going to have to do some re-engineering on some of these. But if we could all come to an understanding, again, and do what's best for everybody, I think that's the point we need to start working on and get to as soon as possible.
Sean has been working with our vendor on West Street, but I think our concern was the future development for the city on Scranton. So if we can clarify some of that, or... So if we can clarify some of that, and have maybe some timelines on that, it could help us determine what to do on Scranton.
And I would say, as an example, so we know that there's going to be funding. I mean,
Okay.
there's an item that's going to the city council, not on the airport runway realignment, but dealing with taxiway improvements, which significant dollars are finding their way to airports. So it's going to happen, and there's going to be funding to do this.
Okay.
And it's been part of the airport layout plan it's like a general plan, where you say, these are going to be streets, and then the streets actually end up being developed. So it's going to happen. Part of this is, for example, the Build Back Better stuff is being pushed into next year. So the money's going to be there. In terms of what is its exact, precise timeline, difficult to say. And as I shared with you, I think I gave you a tentative timeline as we're looking at it with 3 construction seasons and those sorts of things. And I think what was being attempted here is to look at this interim, which wouldn't be the ultimate, which would, the ultimate is with a wider street with center medians and really the full build out, which has the larger price tag attached to it, which this gets to the fight, beyond monies just for the runway, there's going to be monies for other improvements, which is a matter of trying to leverage that, both whether it's Measure R, Build Back Better funds, even within the airport, which would help. That's the uncertainty of it. We know the money's going to be there. It's just not well-defined right now.
Okay.
And working with our airport engineer, who's not on city staff, it's our city engineering consultant, there's a methodical way, just like with everything else. You have to do design, environmental, and then ultimately when you get to construction, the first part is redoing the roads before you ever get to the runway, because you have to have the road removed. So I would say ideally, we're looking at least 3 or 4 years before the road, I guess in the answer to the question, Secretary, it would be as if the project wasn't happening, if the council was asking when's this project going to happen, I would say it's 3 or 4 years away from starting just the road realignment, which is not phase 1. Phase 2 is the first part of the runway, and then phase 3, because you can't interfere with fire season. So there's a very short window that they have to be able to do those improvements in support of that. So that's why I said, ultimately, and I think it's well demonstrated here, that this would be the interim, which would be being advanced, which shows at least one of the intersections being removed, which would be at Westwood and Scranton. I don't know would that include still signalization at West and it's sub B? So, at the city staff, we if the determination is to proceed as is, assuming, you have to look at it both ways. One, without the project, and what would this look like from the airport runway development prospect, you're out 3 or 4 years. If you didn't have that, what would you be doing right now? We'd be doing, not you, we would be doing the signalization, the 2 signalized intersections. And that might be the best alternative, given the timeline that is out there, because I think that is a more timely and consistent with what are the expectations. We could repurpose, we have significant road construction projects under design right now, and I'll use Morton Avenue as an example, or Villa. Both of them are under design. The cabinets are maybe Javier can do a better job of just, or Mike. It can be repurposed. Signals, we could always use components to that, as you saw most recently on Henderson Avenue, where we couldn't go to the green lights because we were still waiting on some of the components for that. So,
Oh, gotcha.
but there, in essence, there would be some improvements that essentially would be constructed, and I don't know what the valuation of that is. It's probably when you're looking at those intersection improvements that ultimately would be related at least $1 million. Is that fair? All right, so you're talking about $1.5 million of improvements that probably at that 3 or 4 year mark then they get removed. But again, sometimes it isn't money, it's time, because time is money.
And appreciate looking at the projects, knowing that there may be some interim solutions, especially based on the timelines, that the final future projects will probably take longer than some of the, as mentioned, opening day activities. So, but also it's good to know that there's some repurposing, there's some ways to look at how to maybe not go too far in with temporary means, and again, being probably realistic about what the work we're putting in on both sides, knowing that labor is hard now, and supplies are even tougher to find. So, are there any other questions from board members?
So in answer to, I just want to, ultimately, I think that's I've not been in the middle of the conversation, but I know it's kind of at, and I guess I'll defer both to the owner's rep as well as to city staff. There's kind of at this break, it's got to go one way or another, because it's real tight right now. If you're, just even in design, it's 10 months, right?
I agree with that.
I think for the board's consideration, regardless of direction we take, there is an engineering development approval phase. I go right or I go left. Conservatively, that's been tagged as 10 months. The intention was that Scranton West and Scranton West would be completed by November of next year. So I think we all can look at a calendar and know we'll have to do that. So the idea is if we do the interim alignment that's proposed for the long-term development, which has a high probability, John was articulating earlier, we can aggressively pursue the design. The issue is that we need to know, are we going right or are we going left from a design perspective? We haven't even gotten into construction. And I've got design engineers that are waiting for that type of decision. And that's where the project's at this point. I think that, from my perspective, representing the tribe, it sounds like you have incredibly high probability that the runway extension is going to go 3 to 4 years. It's a funding question. I've worked with aviation quite a bit, so I kind of know that. I'm of the opinion that it's a good investment. But if we're not going to go that way, I need to know like now. And so I can task our design engineers to aggressively pursue the original assumption that was kind of addressing and retooling MOUs, which is the improvement at Scranton and Westwood and Scranton West. That ultimately, if we do the runway, it'll just be wasting money. It'll all get in the long run. That's really the decision that's kind of coming to the committee. We go right or we go left. And from the technical folks, from Javier, Mike, myself, other engineers aren't here. That's kind of what we're waiting on. I think jointly amongst ourselves, we think interim is the most pragmatic, path forward.
Okay. All right, so we are being waited on to have an opinion. I see that Chairman Garfield has his hand raised.
Yeah. It's hard to hear when Board Member Sanos and Board Member Carr are talking. We can't really hear.
Okay, so we'll make sure that we have everybody's microphone on, and then if we do have people in the chamber come up and speak, we'll make sure they use the microphone.
Okay, but my comment was going to be back to what John was talking about a little bit, and was talking about day one improvements. Is that correct? It's your guys' I don't know, unless it's me, but it's real crackly. But was we talking about day one completions? Is that what was the discussion?
There was discussion of the requirements for opening day, as well as the pending timelines for other projects as well.
Okay, yeah, so that was going to be my comment, was I know that there's been heavy discussion about the roads and stuff most recently, so I just wanted to either hear, may not even have an answer today, but just get an idea on the some of the roads that involve the county. I don't know if they're going to have any opposition to some of the roads or anything like that. I just don't want that to stall out and be a hindrance to the project, because when BIA comes down to see if we're meeting the requirements, we don't want to be penalized for any of that.
Okay, so your question is connectivity to the roads that the county would have concerns about and have impacts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if we're not going to meet the deadlines, then I want the tribe to be responsible for not making the deadline on some of those day one requirements.
Okay. Staff, any input about the county roads or impacts to county roads or requirements?
Yeah, we've been having some back and forth with the county. Originally, they had a scope of what work they were going to do, and namely, what's changed course is a certain section along Teapot Dome across the Porterville Fairgrounds, and then the 40-acre parcel at the northeast corner of West and Teapot Dome. That section of West Street is in the county, but as the county was digging through the records, there's a city-county maintenance agreement, and it's technically on the city, or under city maintenance. So we're going to have to figure out how to get those two sections improved, just like the county was planning on doing. So it's like a checkerboard of this is cities, this is counties, and then there's disconnects all throughout. Obviously, we want to make one nice, smooth project. And so we'll be working on that together here in the spring, and then make sure that gets all completed before opening day. And of course, the county's got other areas outside of this, like Westwood from 190 to our future worth alignment, which is where this interim alignment begins, that they'll be completing among other areas. But specifically around the Scranton, Teapot Dome, and then west, there's a bit of more coordination to take place.
Okay, and then,
Translated, that means that city's going to be doing more than, so what may be reflective in the MOUs of the county doing stuff, it's going to be more city doing stuff, because they're, in their records, they're saying they would be doing things, but they're saying, wow, the city's actually responsible for the maintenance of this area, not us.
and and thank you for that input. And that was going to be my next question, was how much of our finishing out the MOUs impacts some of these issues too? Or, I mean, if things need to be solidified within an MOU before, or how that impacts this board in this regard.
Well, I think ideally this is this authority, which has transportation as one of its coordinating factors. I certainly and I think what we should do, because I can already see how this is going to come together, is that ultimately the counties, which they were going to do this construction season and then push it off into the next construction season, they're going to do something less than what they're going to do something less, because they're going to say, even though we said that we're going to do this area here, they're not going to do that area there, because they're going to say that's the city's responsibility. So what we need to be doing from the city's perspective is bringing back, probably saying, here's what's going to happen. And it's going to be city forces that are going to be doing it, just as you saw the improvements that were done this construction season between 65 and Newcomb, is that there's going to be they are going to do some. There's some areas that they have the responsibility for doing, but there's going to be others, even though they say they're going to do it, it's not going to happen. That's what Javier is telling you, is they're now saying, hey, we come across this agreement and you guys are going to do this, so even though we said we're going to do it, you guys are responsible, so we're going to reduce our that component of it. And that deals with, and I'm not going to, it's the counties, as they said, a reconstruction, which it's not a reconstruction. That's not, we call that rehabilitation, because there is no road base. So that gets ultimately, and it's similar to the conversation about the road. I think what we should be looking at is what are interim improvements for opening day, and the county's going to do a certain amount, and I think the city's going to end up having to do a certain amount, and we'll talk about what those costs are, because the city's forces are paid for through Measure I. That's as you're familiar, it's our 1 cent general sales tax. Those forces are paid through for that. And then we need to be working towards that reconstruction, complete reconstruction of Teapot Dome. And that includes right-of-way acquisition, and that's going to be, and that's where there's money there for, there's 15 million sitting right now in Measure R I mean, Ted Smalley, if he were sitting here, he'd say, I have a $15 million check. Just give me a project. So, you know, so I think a little bit of this needs to be just strategized to say, here's what's going to happen. This is, and I think the county's looking for a way out to say, you know, that's what they're basically saying. Hey, we've come across this. This is you guys, even though we said we were. So I think this group, this authority is going to say, okay, the county's turned this back over. You know, the tribe and the county, you know, I don't know if it requires an MOU to be you know, my experience in MOUs is that, you know, you could always do less if the other party doesn't complain. You know, so if those improvements, if we end up doing what the county was going to do, which is not a reconstruction, just let's be clear about what's happening, that, you know, that there would be a strategy looking at very similarly interim versus what are ultimate improvements and how they're addressed. The good news is there's money.
So it sounds like a plan with initiative is what's going to end up guiding this process. So are there any recommendations or more comments from the board?
I have one more comment, Mr. President. And on the roads, you know, like I said earlier about working for both the city, the county, and the tribe all in one, we really want to take into consideration the emergency vehicles. As you guys know, we talked about a fire station being out there on the property and working with the city and the county with that fire station. So I know the West Street that we have in design now is gonna need some re-engineering because of the effects of we're only gonna be able to turn right, make a right-hand turn as you leave the casino. So we really want to emphasize on that for emergency vehicles. So definitely the casino patrons are a big concern also. But if the emergency vehicles can't leave out of there and turn left if there's an incident on that side of the county or the city, it's a big concern of the tribe. So there's a concern there, and we want to keep that in mind for everybody.
Okay. Councilmember Stowe, did you have any comments?
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't, thank you.
Okay, so we're looking for an action to decide how we're going to approach them. It sounds like there's some multiple considerations for what needs to be done before things are operational in some ways that can be accomplished according to the information we know at this point. And just as direction, do we just need direction from this group to go ahead and continue to plan with the information we have for a projected solution to how the road coordination can work by taking initiative with what we know to be needed?
Yeah, I would say from the conversation today, I would say that the city and the tribe are aligned with the interim recognizing where things are, looking at the interim solution in the rerouting of, it sounds like that seems to be where the city and the tribe are aligned. And I think we can come back with speculation from what Javier said. Here's what the map looks like in responsible parties, and here's where we think it's going to change. And as a city council looks at its budget and appropriation of Measure I funds for, because we come with our road program to the council every year, I would say there would be recommendations coming from PATA to the city council for other improvements to be made on Teapot, and that's going to be specifically Teapot Dome, because that's where there's a question. The questions being raised by the county of saying they were going to make certain improvements that they're now saying are city responsibilities.
Okay. Any more comments from the board? Questions?
I think, I would like Sean to give us like a quick update of where we're at on the road and the best next step to move forward to make sure that some of our
And please come forward that, so that the members online can hear. Thank you.
For everybody's benefit, and I think to complement what John and Javier's brought up, I view the roads in three areas. There's the northern part that we're currently aligned. That's my opinion, and that's from north. There's West Street, which Gary brought up some of the concerns that the tribe has that we're now discovering. And then there's the southern portion, which is the Teapot Dome, which there's variables. So if we look at those three distinct areas, the north, we're aligned. Center, we have some new questions and new concerns. We're just discovering those in the engineering process. We would like to work with your all's engineers to kind of flush some of that out and meet the ultimate goals of both parties. The south, I'm very interested in. To me, it looks like it's more of a change in stakeholders. If the county's deferring to the city to take it over, great. We still know that there's work there, but I think we'd like to partner and realize what the ultimate build-out is and then figure out an interim steps on how to achieve that. That's easy to do. But, you know, from the engineering perspective, Raylene, the concern that I have is more time is specific to the north, so I can advance the engineering there. The center, we're already moving on based on what the original assumptions were in the MOU. In that process, during the conceptual engineering, we are discovering some issues. We'll work this next Tuesday with Javier and Mike Knight on some of those concerns that we are now discovering. But I think that's probably answered the bulk of your questions. But it'd be interesting to see the ultimate build-out. What are the ultimate goals? Because that goes to traffic volumes, traffic speed. I think Gary brought up emergency vehicles, emergency responders. Typically, that requires a signalized intersection for them to come out of the station and deploy. So if that's on West Street, it's kind of nice to know now that that's in the future so that we could do some of the rough-in work early, and then if the fire station's built, it's easier to then accommodate that kind of use in the future. So those are some of the considerations, I think, from the design and construction perspective that we would be looking for. But getting the committee's decision on the north side is a significant milestone for us. So we can then advance work and not just continually talking about the same thing we've been talking about. That answers your question, Raylene?
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for clarifying that. It's valuable to have the communication between the groups and where we can meet. I think it's important to move ahead as fast as we can with being able to keep this project going. I see that Chairman Garfield has his hand raised.
One more time. So anyway, I know that we're working together and stuff with or the agreements with the city and county, but I just thought about this. It's my understanding that some of the, because we got to put in turning lanes, right? And I'm sure that's going to create some widening of the road. Do we have to negotiate with the property owners? My understanding is they own all the way up to up to the center line on some of these properties.
Yeah, it just all depend on where property lines are. The West Street right now has got a certain defined right-of-way, so if the widening to create that left turn pocket pushes the road west of existing, yes, that would require negotiation with that property owner.
Okay, I was just wondering because I think that's probably another check mark for the awareness category.
Yeah, I think that it's good to start bringing up these and look at what we can calendar out. And my other comment about other MOUs was mostly also to calendar within there with the amount of time it takes for other decisions to happen in other places. So I think we start looking at what these benchmarks that may be out of this group's control are, and then start aligning some of the facts. I think we can start getting a clearer picture of timelines and how we can keep this going effectively. Any further discussion? Is that sufficient direction for, okay.
You know which way. Monumental.
All right, so unless there's any more comments, I believe that's the final item, so we can move on to other matters. We'll go ahead and start with Member Santos.
No, I don't have any other matters at this time.
Okay. Member Clower, and any, or Secretary?
No, I don't have anything. I just look forward to working with staff and everybody so that we can move forward. Sorry about that. I just look forward to working with staff and everybody so we could move forward on these other projects besides the casino.
Okay. Thank you. Member Stowe, any other matters?
I just want to apologize that I couldn't be there in person. I'm just at the tail end of the flu, so I don't want to pass it along to anyone, but I wish everybody a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
All right, thank you. Chairman Garfield, did you have any comments? Other matters?
My only concern is just, where we're at with the county. I would hate for whatever processes they have to go through, for that to stall us out, because I know they've been working along pretty well. Maybe we need to keep track of that, but, overall, I think, hopefully everybody has a happy holiday, and then, I guess we'll deal with the issue when it comes up. Thank you.
Thank you.
I expected Chair Garfield, he and I exchanged emails this week, and I did want to bring up, I wasn't aware of it, so it was actually a good, so I'll bring it up in his defense, I guess you'd say, talking about cell reception in the vicinity of the project area, which I've always had, I personally have always, when I was on AT&T, always had poor reception when I was inside the fairgrounds building. I guess I would say there were times I wouldn't even have reception. Turns out that AT&T's service area in the, is strong, I would say pretty strong along 65 and I would say in the other three quadrants of the city from the, you look at 65 and 190, but certainly not in the southwest quadrant. If you take 65 and 190, AT&T's coverage area is pretty good in the other three quadrants, but not in the airport, I would say in the airport area. Verizon seems to be less in the other three quadrants, but more in the airport area. So there's a provider, the city's in the middle of a master lease agreement with AT&T right now to co-locate, to enhance their network. And we don't know where those areas are. We know that there's a dozen or so areas that they wish to co-locate 4G currently to be upgraded to 5G ultimately on city signals. I don't know where those are. They haven't shared those locations with us, but we are under a master lease agreement just approved by the city council to do additional things. So I don't know if there's specific carriers that it just, according to a hot map, I guess I would call it, for network services, Verizon seems to be have better coverage area of the airport area versus AT&T. But AT&T has talked about some gaps in theirs. We just don't know where they're at yet. I thought I'd bring that up just as a given communication I'd had with Chair Garfield.
I appreciate that, John. Sean did remind me that we needed to discuss that. We did have AT&T and Spectrum come do a walkthrough this week of the property. So hopefully we'll have a better idea of what that looks like in the coming weeks.
Okay.
But I think it's something that's infrastructure. Right, infrastructure inside, yeah.
I think the concern that we discovered through, we did a physical survey related to cell coverage on the property for the casino. That survey indicated a lot of pretty light signal coverage. And that, you know, as John said, it's associated with that whole southwest quadrant of city of Porterville. With some of the long-term developmental goals that I think that the airport authority has, the fairgrounds, and my observations of the use of the fairgrounds, and when the fire season was there, I was thinking to myself, there's probably 1,500 cell phones walking around there right now. Okay, there's the casino, potentially a couple thousand people there. You know, the ultimate build out of the property for the tribe would include, you know, hospitality as well as a gaming feature. So there's even more people. I think as the area evolves, I think it's incumbent upon the cellular providers to enhance their service in that area. And in your all's lease agreements with them, it's something that you're in a strong position to suggest that they look at.
Yeah.
And that was my suggestion to the chairman, to the other members of the relocation committee this week. And I think it's this committee's, you know, I think interest to pursue that as an open item, because it is in the long-term interest of the city as well. So just beyond the casino itself.
Yeah, so we'll bring that up with AT&T as we work with them, because they're going to be working with us to, on what, we will bring this up as an issue with them as they are looking to co-locate their facilities on our signals, and say, you know, we need to, you know, talk, there's no, well, at least begin the conversation about enhanced services in the airport area. And I'm sure they're going to want to from their own customer base perspective.
Okay, yeah, it'll be good to keep our eye on how that works, and especially as the growth in that area continues.
Comment on that, Mr. President?
Yes.
John, now is that a cost to AT&T to you guys, or is it a cost to the city to AT&T for services in that realm?
So the lease agreement that we're doing with AT&T right now is that they, instead of developing a large monopole someplace, they are doing, and this is what's called now small cell development. So they're doing, so it's basically, it's cheaper, I would say, for them. And then they have federal protection. The FCC, Julia can give you a really good synopsis of this, but this one, although the Supreme Court chose not to take this case, so they have what's called safe harbor fees. They pay us a de minimis, they don't pay us market rate, they pay us a de minimis amount basically to attach their stuff, and they have the federal power behind them through the FCC under this ruling for them to place their equipment on public facilities to enhance services. We haven't seen the list of, we just know that there's about a dozen sites that they wish to locate this on. We don't know where it is. What I would be interested in talking with them about is the development of, and what we typically see is that they don't do the poles themselves. If you look at, see who owns, there is other, and we, as an example, we have a pole at Station 2, Fire Station 2, that has multiple carriers co-located. So usually there's a leasing company that develops the lease, pays a lease amount to the city, and then leases that space out to the other providers. And usually there'll be multiple providers attached to it. And so if you look on the map, you'll see that there's leasing companies that do this. And we have two, so we have an AT&T specific lease on Station 1. If you go outside Station 1, you'll see there's actually an attachment on the top of Station 1 that's it's encapsulated inside of a facade, so you don't even know it's there. And then you see the monopole that's out at Station 2, which has, but that's not an AT&T pole. That is a leasing company pole that then leases out on that pole to different providers. So this can be addressed a couple different ways. One is by a leasing company that develops a monopole, which maybe they, you know, and under our regulations, they have to camouflage it, so they have to make it a tree, a pine tree or what have you. Or it goes into what's called small cell development, where they, and what they're doing now is about a 4-foot pole that gets put on top of a light pole or a signal, it looks the same, it's colored the same, it looks different because you'll look at all the signals being a uniform height, and then you'll see a 4-foot extension on top of one. And inside is the small cell.
Okay.
That's what AT&T is doing now. We haven't heard from Verizon or anybody else. And we did have a contact on the leasing company on another city property, but then they decided to go in a different direction. So, but that was around Santa Fe School Heritage Center area, but they moved in a different direction. So we can always talk with them about doing other, I think it was one I wasn't aware of, so I think it was a good way, as we're right in the middle of AT&T's lease agreement and locations to bring this up.
I just have, maybe if it was on the trust property, it might bring us some more clout. Something that we'll research on our end, and see what we can come up with, it'll work out better for both of us.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, and a money-making venture. Yeah, I don't know what the leases are. I want to say they're, I don't know, what, I can't remember. It's been too long since we did the Station 1 agreement.
Okay, thank you. Definitely important information to keep in touch with. Everybody knows the value of cell phone connectivity and commerce, so thanks for the information. I, just in other matters, just want to thank everybody for participating today, both in person and virtually. Look forward to future meetings, which our next meeting is January 21st. I did want to mention, however, on behalf of the city, there was a flower arrangement we had acquired in memory of Rhoda Hunter for her passing, and we would like to express our condolences to the tribe and tribal council, as well as the family. And there was some difficulty in delivery, so we're hoping for some guidance on how to present that in the most effective way today. It's here in the council chambers, so I just wanted to mention that as part of my sincere apologies for the loss. It's some great memories with Rhoda through Leadership Porterville and time working with her, as well as all that she contributed as a tribal elder. So just wanted to mention that. And with that, I believe we are adjourned.
Happy holidays, everybody.